I am Ronaldo McKenzie, and welcome to another episode of the Neoliberal Round podcast.
Wait, I'm not even in. Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Not bad. Jason Larry is here, sir.
You are always on time. You are always on time. Very, very good. And with all the students.
All right. The link for John Castro when he in our class.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to retrieve or trying to locate it, but somehow I can't find it out. By chance, you could send it back, sir, in the group, please.
I don't know if Chantel can help you with that.
Okay,
Chantel
sir.
has access. Yeah, she even left comments on some of the videos. So she have problems accessing any of the videos. I think Miss Chantel can help you with that because
Okay,
I'm
sir.
here in the US. I'm not sure if that's part of the problem. Let me pause. Welcome to the guys. I apologize for being late. I'm running and
Good
I'm
evening,
still.
sir.
Good evening, guys. How are you? Welcome to the class. Uh, Let me open up the lecture for today. Oops. Today. Give me a few minutes. I'm behind. I'm behind. I was going to cancel class for today, but I decided against it because
Okay, sir.
no, we only have a few weeks left. So I said no. I'm gonna do. We have so much on the agenda. I have to have class today. But I wasn't feeling too well. I was a little bit under the weather, a bit tired, exhausted. I've been doing a lot and working on a lot. There's a lot of projects that I'm working on in the liberal. There's a lot that's happening at the Neoliberal Corporation. Lots. So it's just I've been under a lot of stress. But we will have class today. I will try and wrap up early, however. And there is a video I want you guys to watch. A video is also on an audio stream. Like the good thing I have a lot of these things on the podcast and or videos. This thing on because I want to do a topic on period poverty, which is part of the whole discussions on looking at identity. And when we discuss and explore the issue of this particular course, Caribbean Thought, which talks about diverse currents. I've updated the course significantly. I've revised it significantly because, as I said to you, we're 21st century people. You guys will take the lead. Later on, when you guys start to teach the course, or if you guys should ever teach the course, whoever comes after me, the younger person, they should be able to take the course and adjust it based on their own experiences and the experiences of the students and what's going on in the world, the transformative the transformations taking place in the world. And as I said, knowledge cannot be insulated. Okay. Learning, you have to take into consideration what is happening in society and it should speak to the issues of the day. Okay. That's very important. So I have revised it a little bit because Caribbean Thought speaks of diverse currents in the past that has shaped our realities. But I said to you, the diverse currents itself has been shaped. The significant Caribbean people, significant characters in our Caribbean development. And when you look at each Caribbean nation, each of us contribute differently to the world stage. Say, for example, Trinidad is known for their literary genius. A lot of literarians come from Trinidad. Jamaica is known for our music. Our music is next to none, and some Caribbean countries also in terms of the academic development and education. Cayman Islands, which is still part. Oh, and that's what I want to talk about today, before we get into the lecture. But diverse currents. But I said to you, those people have been tainted, and the experiences of the past have been tainted, have been influenced. Who have influenced them? And I said to you, when you study Western civilization, which I wanted, there was a lecture I was supposed to do about the foundation of knowledge and the hegemony of faith. Because I say, when you start to think about Caribbean thought is part of Western civilization and the development of knowledge and thought. And part of that development, hold on, let me open up the lecture for today. Caribbean thought lecture. There was a professor who was supposed to come to the class today, but both persons, here we go. Good, I will send this to you guys. Send this to you. Good. Let me go back. I'm sorry, my screen is paused for a moment. Here we go. All right. Can you guys? Great. So everybody's coming in. Welcome to the class, guys. Welcome. We have 10 persons so far. I was saying to you, right, there's one lecture that I really want to hear, which I never get a chance to talk to you about, the foundations of knowledge and the hegemony of faith. I said to you, I'm also a doctoral student at Georgetown, and I'm studying, looking at there's a course that I'm doing, I completed a course on DLS Foundation 1, there's DLS Foundation 2, DLS Foundation 3, there's DLS Foundation 4. All those courses you have to do. You have to sit the general examination, and then you do your dissertation. That's how it is done. Now one of the DLS Foundation, and I've actually talked about that. I wrote an article about that, or a paper and publication about Kemetic spirituality. And when I completed DLS Foundation 1 and the DLS Foundation 2 and 3. When I did those foundation courses, the courses explored, in a sense, the foundation of knowledge, beginning from Homer, and most and we are part of what is known as the Western civilization, and Western civilization usually begins from Homer, because that's the end of it. Homer marks the end of, or the Iliad said to be written by Homer, marks the end of an oral tradition, or just as we are moving from oral tradition into written, to the written tradition. Homer is according to historians, Homer is the last known or piece of record that represents that particular period. And of course there's Homer and Herodotus. But before them there's also Mesopotamia, Samaria, and of course there are people who believe that there's some kind of influences, that Homer and the Greeks were influenced. But not much is said of the influence. And when you study these writings, the Erlias, which is more German, or talking about Norsemen and the foundation of their knowledge, their history starting in, they have a different kind of story that talks about Achilles. I said to you, Achilles was seen as the warrior hero but then different religious groups throughout history have a different story, that promotes their cultures, their identity, their experience, but in a sense which privileges them. And so I'm studying the foundations of knowledge, looking at how privilege, power, and position how that has developed over time. And I've written a paper which I was supposed to share as part of a lecture. So, this has never been done when you study Caribbean thought. Caribbean thought never usually explore the foundations of Western civilization. But I am saying to you that, but this is Caribbean thought 101, or Caribbean thought 2200. And I'm saying to you that it is important for us to think about based on what we've been talking about in this class and looking at human nature and looking at this drive to privileged positions and how the Caribbean's reality has been deepened. And you look at the dynamic or the position in the world, the position of certain societies in the world. We talk about specialization. And if you watch one of the film, if you watch one of the film that we showed, I think it was Life and Death, it was said that according to the technocrats from the IMF, one of the arguments was that, Michael Manley said they wanted the loan to do something else and they wouldn't, and they would not allow them to do anything else. They gave them some strong conditions, placed some strong conditions on the loan. And when he said, well, we have other programs and development programs that we have to tackle and so on and so forth, the lenders from the World Bank or the IMF said, it's not our problem, it's your problem. It's your problem, okay? And then they say, well, and then in one other take, the film says, well, you have tourism. You have tourism, as if you have tourism, and when you look at the Caribbean, many Caribbean countries, our production, our economic industry, our production set borders around the raw material. When you look at the level of specialization, where we are in terms of the specialization is usually around certain skills that don't generate a certain amount of profit or wealth. Certain specialization in terms of being are you at the beginning stage of the production of production? Are you at the middle stage of production? The finishing of production? Are you more okay? Where are your strengths around the raw material, but in terms of the extraction of the bauxite, and then you give it to other people to enrich it and turn it into aluminium, which turns into the finished product. But the raw material, the extraction process doesn't pay any money. And then they create systems that places premium on different levels or stages of the production process, which cheapens the value of a particular person's work based on the specialization. And we talk about how people are compensated. And we talk about when you look at certain positions that were dominated by men used to attract a higher level of compensation. But as women came into those jobs and those professions, and some men move out of those in some jobs, such as casework and teaching and so on, some of these jobs, suddenly you find the wages stop, or there's some kind of wage disparity, the compensation falls. But the conversation I'm talking about as we get ready to get into the lecture here is that when we begin to think about Caribbean thought, we don't think about Caribbean thought in a vacuum. The world as it exists today cannot be studied in a vacuum. You cannot, or in isolation of any other thing, because especially with the tectonic changes in the world, we talk about technological changes in the world, where everything is becoming remote, okay? And there is this talk of algorithms, and algorithms are built into the digital technology that controls artificial intelligence, or how programs operate today. There are now machines and technology have more intelligence to do things that human beings would normally do, but now they can do it. And then these algorithms also now help to re-establish control of information, because technology decentralized information, but then now they have built in algorithms into the technology, which now helps them to re-establish control of information, so that no information, and where algorithms cannot do that, then they use then there are also then governments can use regulation to regulate, okay, or some people, or they can, or take over, where a bigger company like Spotify can take over a smaller company like Anchor. But as I said, you think about things, we in order to appropriate things properly. And there's a lecture I was supposed to do on critical thinking, and I don't know if I got a chance to do it, but I'm not going to delve into that. You have the resources there. If you go to theneoliberal.com, type in critical thinking. I think I did a paper on critical thinking, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit today, because so I said you have to think of, so you look at what's going on you look at what pertains in terms of the foundation of civilization, and how people have repositioned how societies and groups and peoples in societies, as society develop, reposition themselves, their thinking, and even make and even recreate certain traditions and oral traditions and certain stories within cultures, and make them elaborate or embellish them. And over time, future men reinterpret these embellished stories as something sacrosanct or other than what they were intended to be, which I referenced that in the paper, which I really want to spend some time. But I don't think I have time. I really need to develop a Caribbean Thought Part 2 class, because I want to talk about the importance of looking at the foundations of knowledge and looking at Caribbean in relation to what is happening in the world, and in relation to the Western civilization that we are in. I said to you, the Caribbean is part of the Americans. Yes, we're part of the Americans. The Caribbean also is part of the African experience. Okay, but they said we are an hybrid people. We're mixed up. So I wanted to spend some time to probably delve into that, but to be honest, I don't have a lot of time, but there are materials. All of this is available. If you go to academia.edu, I've written a paper that, or ReinaldoCMcKenzie.com or theneoliberal.com, there's a featured essay. The featured essay looks at, maybe I could probably try and find the featured essay right now. I'm going to try and find the featured essay. Let's go to.
Sir, you're in a note.
Oh, I'm going to go get my mic.
You're in a note, sir.
All right.
No, you are frozen.
Okay, hold on. I know why. I'll be back in a second. Can you see me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Seeing you wasn't the problem, It was that you were in a note.
Yes,
so
sorry.
The audible was the problem.
That's fine. I'm going to fix the audio because I have a million things processing on my lap on the computer right now. So I was busy working. I was trying to close everything out. I have about a million side things open. So because it's so many things are processing in the background, it's slowing down the computer, and it's the internet, probably the connection is too much. And I have a mic that I usually use that direct the sound. But I haven't fully started the class yet. I will start the class momentarily. I was waiting on everybody to come. So I am going to get my mic, plug it in, and get ready for class fully. But this is the preface of the class, the introduction to the class. And just so you know, by the way, the reason why you guys have all of this recordings available, so, and that's good. But there is a paper I want to share with you, if I could find it, which probably I will only talk about, just share the beginning of it. All the way down to the bottom. There we go, featured essay. It's at ReinaldoCMcKenzie.com, and I go to featured essay, the development of power, privilege, position, and status within the foundations of historical literature and divine intervention. In fact, let me share my screen. I will share my screen with you. This was not the lecture for today, actually. But I decided I was going to do that because this is important. You're seeing the screen. Yes, you are. So I went to This is ReinaldoCMcKenzie.com. It's the neoliberal. This is one of the other feed, the neoliberal post. And this featured essay, the development of. So this is in academia.edu. This is part of a dissertation I'm working on, part of the book manuscript, and this is part of a paper that was completed and submitted. I think I got an A for this paper actually. Oops, error. Whoa, what's going on? Okay, sorry about that. This paper is not showing here. DLS Foundation. DLS Foundation. DLS Foundation. With the paper, Plato in the Phaedo was supposed to do something like that. I don't have time for that one. DLS Foundation, this final paper. Let's finish. Here we go. Essay paper, Reflections on Life. I don't know why I say that. Foundations of Knowledge and the Hegemony of Faith. Now, this is the reason why I'm beginning this class like this today, because I'm sorry that I'm all over the place. I'm sorry because we are doing so much and I'm trying to fit everything one. So please, I apologize about this. But because I really want to wrap up from the corruption. I have a whole lecture to give, to present, wrapping up last week, looking at corruption, and then looking at Guyana's oil as opportunity. But I want to table that, because as we begin to start thinking about sexuality and sexual identity, there is a scripture in Genesis chapter 19, verse 128. Do you know what Genesis chapter 19, 128 says, guys? Guys? Hello?
No, sir.
Are you guys? Oh, okay. Great. All right, that's cool. I am going to bring it up. Genesis 19, 1. And as we get into the issue of identity, and Rex Nettlesford talks about the problem of identity, who we are as an individual, and the importance of that. I want to talk about Jamaica and the Caribbean and the issue of identity. But not just any identity, but the issue of sexual identity, because the issue of sexuality is very important. The issue of masculinity. The issue of femininity, and how males relate to females, and the challenge of masculinity, the ideas that we have about masculinity, and how that affects organizational dynamic within the Caribbean and within the home, within family unit. And just so you know, when we think about cultures, you have culture, but they are subculture. But we cannot, but when we talk about Homi Bhabha and most post-colonialists such as Homi Bhabha and Richard Dr. Frantz Fanon talked about the general will. They are against. The problem of culture is a problem of general will. It assumes a general will, a general way of life for everyone. And sometimes we get lost into that general will to the point where people expose a will on others. And so we have to, so I'm talking about when you think about masculinity, so there are cultures and there are subcultures. There is Jamaica, but there are many Jamaicas. There is the Caribbean, but there are many Caribbeans. And as much as we said we have, and okay, we're going to talk about that in a few, when the final class, when we wrap up the class, we are going to have a summary that speaks to these issues. I won't spoil it. But there are many Caribbeans. And this is important for our reflection. And the issue, and when we start to delve into the issue of masculinity, you cannot study Caribbean. You cannot explore Caribbean thinking without looking at the issue of masculinity. Because okay, when you talk about Jamaica and the Caribbean, we have the culture is very masculine and male dominant in a sense, male dominant, and it's masculine, and this masculinity, and what does this masculinity looks like? Where does it come from? And then you start to look at Caribbean theology or Caribbean faith and how faith influenced ideas about sex. That also involves ideas about masculinity. We talk about where does this faith come from? The theology is influenced by a European theology that is devoid of certain truths and certain experiences of people. Now, let me tell you, I have a salacious class for you today. When we start to talk about the issue of penetration, when you talk about masculinity, when you talk about sex and sexual identity, one of the words that characterize those tropes is the issue of penetration. And the issue of penetration, the ability to penetrate, is power. But okay, the man is always, when you think about the man, what characterizes the man is that he is seen as the one with the ability to penetrate. While when you think about the woman is penetrated, is always penetrated. But when we think about it from as a religious institution and people who are bent as theologians within a Christian milieu here at the seminary, so I am okay, I can teach the way I teach in this sense. But for those people who might be listening later on, I apologize if you are offended by me speaking in these ways. But I am, as I said to you, I do not privilege any faith over any other faith, but I find primacy in the faith, in the Christian faith, the faith I was raised in, the faith I know, okay? And it's the one that I've latched onto, and I've used to make sense of my reality and my experience, okay? But I give credence to your reality and your experience and what you find valuable. But this is important. The issue of penetration. When we think about the scriptures and think about it in terms of why does man have this ability to penetrate? Then you are pointed to the scriptures where after Eve had fallen, what happened after Eve had fallen? Man and woman fell because, man blamed the woman. The woman blamed the serpent, okay? But the woman was punished, and her punishment, according to scriptures, was that she would serve the man and she would bear him children. She would be penetrated, and that penetration brings about a pain, and then of course, so there is this, what characterizes the man's ability to penetrate? That power. And so when you think about man and man in those sense, you think about that ability, that characteristic, ability to penetrate. But that thinking comes from a Judeo-Christian or a biblical perspective, which is part of a theology, a Caribbean theology as well, which is influenced by the Christian theology that we have inherited, so that Caribbean and its diaspora have inherited, and probably it's part of also civilization. We're part of the Western civilization, and Western civilization, from its very foundation, have privileged man, have placed value on man. The man has always been seen as very important. And when you talk about now liberalism comes and disrupts that and says, no. Talk about inclusivity and so on and so forth. You have to be inclusive and talk about Jesus as mother or whatever. People are offended by that. People are offended by that because they're offended by it because that's not what they are exposed to, and that was not part of their experience. And we have, I just said, but yes.
Sorry. I probably should have raised my hand. That's a question now, as you're on this topic of masculinity and all of that.
Well, let me finish the point. I was going somewhere with this. What was I going to say? And the issue privilege. But as I said to you, but there has always been this privilege. A privilege where, okay, so men have, so we live in so you talk about a male-dominated society, but it has been, but when you look at the foundations of Western civilization, there has always been this drive to blame the woman. Irrespective, I'm telling you, when you start to study Homer and read the earlier writings and so on, there's always been this drive to blame the woman. So, but it was always the men that were, it was Homer, Herodotus, and there were all these men were writing. It wasn't the women weren't really writing, it was men who privileged themselves. Okay, I don't know. Probably. Question, yes, go ahead.
Sir,
yes.
So, sir, based on what you're saying, do you think that the feminist movement would contradict religious belief based on the placement of the man in the family?
Feminism is part of, is part of this kind of Marxist materialism, so to speak. Looking at how products in society creates dynamics in society. And of course, a feminist would look at the production of man, but the production of man is what he produces. Society allows him to produce that and privileges that. But of course, feminist does not, feminism promotes the woman, gives primacy to the woman. And if you look at what's going on in TV today, as if that's what they talk about woke, or talk about this new drive to promote, to condition our thinking now. You see a lot of women on the TV screen. I'm telling you, you go on Netflix and...
So, sir, does the Bible stand behind feminism? Based on what you are discussing now,
when you
does
talk
the
about
Bible understand with Marxist and all of that, and the Karl Marx perspective?
When you talk about the Bible, you're just in what Bible? The Christian Bible? Because I'm telling you, there are Bibles, and now they have.
Yes, sir. Well, we were on the topic. Well, sir, you were discussing.
I'm being funny. Yes, that's true. I'm being funny. Yeah, you're right. I'm being funny, guys. But yeah, but if you study postmodernism, or when you start to study Christianity today, Christianity Today. Or there's a course that they had asked me to teach, contemporary theology. Part of contemporary theology, which gives primacy to know a new theology a theology that humanizes faith. Of course, once this theology that humanizes faith talks about the fact that looks at Jesus as being human and is devoid of his divinity. So there are some feminists who don't accept that. It depends. There's some feminists who don't accept conservative Christianity. They talk about conservative Christianity, talk about what kind of Christianity we have in the Caribbean. Is it conservative Christianity? You know, is it a contemporary Christianity and so on? But the kind of Christianity that we have, and there are people who can use the Bible to do anything. So of course there are Christian feminists who believe that the Bible does not speak against the promotion that Christian feminists who believe that the woman is the most important figure and that embraces the language of the woman. So it depends on which feminists you're talking about, okay? Because there are the feminist movement, there are those who are atheists, but of course there are some feminists who are Christians. And but for these feminists, what they promote is that a kind of feminism that changes the language, that universalizes the language. That says, okay, for example, in the church, the Catholic Church, women couldn't be priests. In some churches today in Jamaica, I think in the Brethren Church in Jamaica, women aren't allowed to speak in some churches. And, you know, women aren't allowed to speak because they point to scripture. No, there are some feminists who are opposed to that. Okay. And even in some of your faith, some of you are pastors and you are at the theological seminary. Okay. That's feminists would promote that. Okay. But there was at one time, you would find women weren't allowed to study theology. Women weren't allowed to preach and to be theologians and so on and so forth, just so you know, okay? The world, okay? And you have radical feminism, and you have a more middle of the road feminism, okay? Yes, I see a hand there. Yes. Okay, but I'm sharing my screen still, and I wanted to bring up this. By the way, there's several things happening there's some in Jamaica which I have to talk to you about, and that I'm going to take a quick 2-minute break. I'm going to get my mic. There's some notes that I have for class today which I haven't brought inside with me, so I need to run and grab my notes. My bag with all my notes and my stuff is still in the car. I'm going to bring it. So give me 5 or 2 to 3 minutes. Let me go bring my notes because there are some topics that I want to touch on today. But I wanted to share with you what's going on with the Haiti situation. We're going to talk about that. What's going on with Haiti? I have some progress on that. What's going on with TikTok? There's a news with TikTok. I'm going to talk about period poverty. And I have a recording on period poverty on an interview I did with the executive director of the Herflow Foundation, Shellen Weeks. She came up. I interviewed her. I'm going to play some of it for you for the class today for you to watch. And I interviewed her and talk about some of the challenges that she had. You know, I don't know if many of you know about period poverty and the fact that many girls are struggling to have many girls, especially in Caribbean countries or developing countries, struggling to go to school, to get an education. They don't go to school because they don't have the resources to purchase menstrual cycle pads. My language is bad. And many men, and she talked about within Jamaican culture, she had a lot of challenge, a lot of fight with the church and with many people who were opposed to her. Because we are such a masculine society, she talks about the problems and the challenges she had with her project. Her job is to end period poverty, probably with over the next 2 years, I think. And she talks about what period poverty is, her work in terms of the foundation in Jamaica. She got an award from the Governor General of Jamaica as well. So, and I want to play a bit of it for you as we talk about the issue of sexuality, which is very important, and the issue of period poverty, which is a very important issue in Jamaica and some of the Caribbean islands and countries where girls are struggling to provide, to access resources that they need to care for themselves. So, and that affects poverty. Okay, and so we talk about ending period poverty. And of course, we want to talk about it, touch on a little bit on homosexuality and heterosexuality, pansexual, whatever the case you call it. We want to touch on that a little bit, because that's very important in terms of Jamaica. And I think at one time, some Jamaican stars were banned from coming to the US or from the UK because of their ideas and what they've used, and their music was vitriolic and so on and so forth. I want to hear what you guys think about that. Probably we won't have time for this class. I want to get into that probably, or maybe something you guys to think about for the future. And of course, we want to talk about this thing about the foundations of knowledge and the hegemony of faith, demystifies the sacred. Right, the foundations of knowledge and the hegemony of faith demystifies the sacred and the profanity of cultures and profane of cultures that purport standards and discriminates. And the question was, do the poems of Homer and Hesiod's Theogony and the biblical stories provide a basis to begin to understand the problem and consequences of human dynamics in the development of human society? Do the poems of Homer and Hesiod's Theogony and the biblical stories, and Jamaica, I mean, we talk about when you talk about Caribbean thought and start study Caribbean society, Jamaica is a predominantly Christian society. So of course, we have to talk about the biblical stories. Do they provide a basis to begin to understand the problem and consequences of human dynamics in the development of human society? Okay, and I guess I won't probably, maybe I should share a little bit about that quickly, but let me take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll get into it some more. So we'll be right back after. I think I really want to get into this as I go into the class. So give me a few minutes, give me about, let's come back at 7:55, okay? And you will hear me a little bit clearer when we come back, all right?
The Andrew Holness administration is embarking on the most comprehensive constitutional reform work to be undertaken in the nation of Jamaica, with a view to craft a new modern constitution of Jamaica. The goal is not simply to swap a foreign monarch, the King of England, for a local president. We hope to use the opportunity to The Andrew Holness administration is embarking on the most comprehensive constitutional reform work to be undertaken in the nation of Jamaica, with a view to craft a new modern constitution of Jamaica. The goal is not simply to swap a foreign monarch, the King of England, for a local president. We hope to use the opportunity to facilitate a reset of the nation, moving to a culture of excellence and discipline.
A message from the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs.
The Andrew Holness administration is embarking on the most comprehensive constitutional reform work to be undertaken in the nation of Jamaica, with a view to craft a new modern constitution of Jamaica. The goal is not simply to swap a foreign monarch, the King of England, for a local president. We hope to use the opportunity to facilitate a reset of the nation, moving to a culture of excellence and discipline.
A message from the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs.
The Andrew Holness administration is embarking on the most comprehensive constitutional reform work to be undertaken in the nation of Jamaica, with a view to craft a new modern constitution of Jamaica. The goal is not simply to swap a foreign monarch, the King of England, for a local president. We hope to use the opportunity to facilitate a reset of the nation, moving to a culture of excellence and discipline.
A message from the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs.
The Andrew Holness administration is embarking on the most comprehensive constitutional reform work to be undertaken in the nation of Jamaica, with a view to craft a new modern constitution of Jamaica. The goal is not simply to swap a foreign monarch, the King of England, for a local president. We hope to use the opportunity to facilitate a reset of the nation, moving to a culture of excellence and discipline.
A message from the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs.
The Andrew Holness
And we are
administration
back.
is embarking on the most comprehensive constitutional reform work to be undertaken in the nation of Jamaica, with a view to craft a new modern constitution of Jamaica. The goal is not simply to swap a
Okay, okay. All right, let's go back to, let me see how many persons. Only 81 persons participated. I should have added, I'm going to end the poll in a couple of minutes. Oh, this is good. Should Jamaica become a republic, moving away from constitutional monarchy? Constitutional monarchy. I have been very critical of this, I don't want to influence your position, but I've been critical of this constitutional monarchy that we have, talking about the independence that we have was arranged. I mean, I don't know if Trinidad has a republic. I believe they have a president. They've had one for a very long time. I want it to be great to hear what you guys think All right. And we are going to end the poll. End poll. Share results. Okay, are you guys back? Are you guys back? Not yet? So we had a poll. Just so you know, just before we get into the next
And I need something to put my act in. Maya, can I get something to put my act in? Please.
Yes.
I'm okay.
Yes. Hello? All right. Can you guys hear me? Should Jamaica become there is Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir, hearing you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, are you guys seeing the poll?
Yes, sir.
Well, so should Jamaica become a republic? That's in the news. Are you guys aware of the news as it relates to what's going on in? Well, you guys are from Jamaica. You guys of the announcement saying that that we're transitioning to a republic, and so I asked the question: should Jamaica become a republic? 78% of you agreed, and 2% of you disagreed. I would love to know the 2%, but why some of you believe that Jamaica should be a why you guys believe that Jamaica should be a republic? Why do you guys believe that? Are you guys hearing me?
Yes, sir.
I'm asking a question. Some of you believe that Jamaica should be a republic. Why? Those who believe Jamaica is a republic, why do you believe Jamaica should become a republic?
Move from under the Queen, sir.
Move from under the Queen.
Yes,
But
sir.
there's no Queen anymore, the King. There's no Queen anymore, the King. What do you mean by under the King? Why do you mean by? What do you mean by under the King? Why do you mean by move from under?
So since we don't have a queen anymore, it's a king. So they will have no more say in Jamaica.
So do you believe that because we have a constitutional monarchy, do you believe that England or the king has a say in the operations of our country today?
Yes, sir. They always do. As though they say we get independent, but somehow we are still under the Queen. There is some ties. Because we are Commonwealth.
What are these ties? Yeah, but isn't
and we still have a Governor General, sir. And the Governor General works with the Queen.
Yes.
So there is still some ties.
Yes.
Okay. So if we become a republic, then we will have no ties to them anymore.
Okay. Yes. Mary. Sorry, who was that?
Yes, sir.
Somebody had a question. Sorry, who was that? Somebody had a question. Believe that Jamaica should not become a republic. Who is that? Who is that? Who was that? Somebody believed that Jamaica shouldn't be a republic. Who was that? Hello? You want to share why Jamaica shouldn't become a republic? Guys? I'm having some problem with the internet.
Your internet is fine, sir. They don't want to reveal themselves.
Oh, I am not sure what's going on. I'm not hearing much. Okay. All right, but that's quite interesting that some people believe that Jamaica shouldn't be a republic. Of course, I'm not sure that I would love to hear people's position as to why they believe Jamaica should not be a republic. But that is quite interesting. And it's interesting that people, I mean, I think in Cayman Islands, they had a referendum as to whether or not they should become independent, and they voted to remain dependent. They voted to remain dependent. And I think the feeling is that they are better off aligning themselves with Britain. I don't know if some people believe that aligning Jamaica with, it's better to align Jamaica with Britain. And there are those who might feel otherwise. It provides greater scrutiny, especially with the issue of corruption. But I think nothing becomes the law of the land without the Queen assent and putting her seal on it. But once the Prime Minister and the majority house rules, then it becomes part of the law. How does being a part of the constitutional monarchy, how does it affect our prosperity? How does it affect our wealth? How that is the claim. But how does it affect Jamaica's abilities? How does it make Jamaica better? That's the question. Okay. And under the association in terms of the constitutional monarchy that Jamaica has right now, of course, the constitutional monarchy means then that the Queen also has to, I mean, I believe that the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal is also in Britain. So does that mean that, so those are some of the questions you guys will have to ask, yes? Does it make it easier for Jamaicans to now establish the final court in Jamaica where they can make appeals? But then many people believe as though having that extra layer, that unbiased layer, helps. They believe that they are unbiased. They believe that it's good to have international scrutiny because they cannot trust locals, you know. But those are some of that's what some people have said. All right, let's get into the lecture for today. And today I want to spend some time real quickly to share a very important point as it relates to the foundations of knowledge and the hegemony of faith. And I'm going to begin by saying that when you begin to look at when you begin to study society, you have to, and we look at the Caribbean, part of the Caribbean, problem stems from the issue of power. Power is a very important issue. You have to study power. Because we talk about dynamics in society. We talk about the Caribbean being, at one time, they were Caribbean countries or global South countries were said to be third world countries. Already the demarcation, the representation of one's status, of one's position in relation to all things was third or developing. Or we talk about the kind of capitalism was always dependent. Or when you talk about our production and capabilities, it was always devoid of capital intensive, of the capital intensive. So when you look at the issue of, when you study Caribbean, which is part of Western civilization, it's also important that you look at power, which purports to examine how the status quo uses strategy to extend, establish, or maintain power, which then poses problems for human progress. This is important. Again, talk about looking at the Caribbean today. We are still in a position of stagnation. Okay. And we said that when you look at the issue of power, and by stagnation, it means haphazard development, but that's just economically. But when you talk about socially, educationally, talk about the influence of Caribbean in the world and on the world stage, and what the contributions Caribbean thinkers have made to the development of Caribbean and the world, it has not always been so clear. Talk about, okay, reggae music. Some people, they say they took over reggae music and turned it into rap. I know rap is okay and is big music. And you talk about and of course talk about the Caribbean. You have to also talk about the issue of the Black position, because the majority of the people in the Caribbean, well, okay, there's a large proportion of the people who are Black or identify as that. And you look at Haiti and what's going on in Haiti, and we will talk, and I will give you an update as to what's happening with Haiti in a second. I mean, sorry, in a few later on, before we end the class, I will give you an update, because the US has now shifted their position in terms of they will no longer be sending an intervention force into Haiti. But we said that we're looking at power. The problem of Caribbean, the problem of Haiti is a problem of power. It's the issue of power. Slavery was the issue of power. Power that purports to okay? And when you look at power, we're looking at, you have to, when you look at this issue of power, or the perspective of power that I'm providing as part of the problem, power that purports to examine how the status quo uses strategy to extend, establish, or maintain power, which then poses problems for human progress. And so it involves looking at the development of power, privilege, position, and status within the very foundations of historical literature and divine intervention. Now, and so but our examination in this course, in the humanities, and of course you're the professor, the person facilitating the course, is a student of liberal arts and liberal studies, and so the course and looking at the issue of Caribbean has to be done. Well, it has to be interdisciplinary, in a sense, utilizing various disciplines, various lenses, and various experiences. But it benefits from the discipline of liberal studies and liberal arts, which lifts up issues that had to do with issues of human values and ethics. When we study society from liberal studies and liberal arts milieu, of course, we are lifting up issues of human values and ethics. We will consider and make conclusions about the foundations of knowledge and the hegemony of faith. Now, as we continue, one of the important things that we must consider is the issue that when we look at perspectives, I talked about looking at a perspective. Yesterday I wrote an article on what's going on with TikTok, and I talk about I'm presenting a perspective on news from an subaltern approach. And if I were to ask you, when I say I'm presenting to you the subaltern approach, what am I talking about? What am I talking about? When I say to you, I'm presenting a perspective, or we students in this class, as scholars, as academics in this class, we are studying
the issues of Caribbean and Caribbean thinking and so on from a subaltern view. We've talked about that. Okay? What are we talking about? It has to be from a subaltern view. But I won't give away the answer. That's probably one of the questions on the exam. We've talked, okay? But when we talk about that, I said to you, so we have to look at the professor, the lecturer, and the course, and the students, and all of us in this course, our experiences. We cannot learn in a vacuum. We bring to the table the experience, and we are part of an international and a historical experience. In the book, Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty, and Resistance, I said to you, what agency do I have as a Black man from the Caribbean, from the global South, living in the global North, who is seen as an alien with big sharp teeth, waiting to plunder, to steal, or to take over, or whatever the case might be. But it was always to demonize the other. But that is always part of the issue of power. Whether you are talking about it from whatever class you are in, that's the dominant class of today, whatever person also, but it's rampant in society. And we talked about the issue of violence and what will upend violence. And we talk about colonization is a process of colonization involves violence. And this is important here. So we are formulating an understanding of Caribbean within a post-colonial milieu, post-colonial, post-Israel. It's beyond what was independence, post-colonial milieu, within a frame. And when we talk about what solutions and what opportunities the Caribbean have to reinvent itself or to reshape itself, when you start to study Caribbean and our thinking and our position in the world and so on and so forth, you look at the strategy in the world that's behind our position, and you talk about what opportunities we have to reinvent ourselves. And one of the things we have to think about is social media, what's happening with technology today. And how involved is the Caribbean in reshaping its society to take advantage of the development in technology that can help to propel our communities, propel our societies. Social media is the greatest victory for masses and social movements that will upend strategies of power by the status quo and the culture of violence in society, the violence of colonization, the violence that has been done to people and to the vulnerable. The answer may lie in an exploration of the development of power, privilege, position, and status within the foundations of historical literature and divine intervention. Last week, we talked about corruption a little bit. We showed a video and briefly introduced the topic, and I have several notes which I already share an initial lecture file presentation with random draft, with some notes that speaks to the issue of corruption, and I will share, and I have updated it. I still didn't send it, and I apologize about that. But the initial arguments that surrounding corruption is there. But this is important when we talk about opportunities to reinvent ourselves. And as I said to you last week, we talked about, when we were talking about corruption, I apologize, I had lost my thought a bit. When we're talking about corruption, Transparency International, one of the advocacy international groups, which are kind of watchdog and researchers and people who promote, who watch and study the movement of corruption in societies and would provide some kind of agency in society where people where there is corruption and it is creating injuries in people's lives. You can go, there are ways, and I think they work with the National Integrity Agency. National Integrity Agency is a signatory or part of the international corruption movement, anti-corruption movement, of which transnational international is a part of. And when we were looking at when we were talking about corruption, we talk about it is in order for us to deal with corruption, in order for us to deal with a social problem in society, we have to first understand it by studying it. And part of studying it is to look at the process, look at it, its protraction, the protracted movement of it over the years. Look at the history, look at the past, study it. And then look at what has been done. Because you do the same thing, you're going to get the same results. So you say, okay, and you look at what's going on in corruption, you look with the corruption index today, it's all but stagnant. In fact, it's as if people we're going backward in terms of the fight against corruption today. So what it is that needs to happen, what it is that needs to change. So when we are in this class studying Caribbean, and we have, of course, every society have challenges, but there are also opportunities, and we have tremendous opportunities, but we do not want the challenges to affect the opportunity, because whenever we have opportunities, the opportunities have left us, and I will allude to it. And that is why I am deliberately waiting to wrap up the conversations about corruption, because the conversation about corruption is part of a wider discussion lecture that looks at not just corruption, which are barriers to prosperity, which also provides another critique as to why Caribbean is the way we are today, and many countries of the global south. And if you look at the corruption index, if you look at the world map, most of the majority of the countries that were formerly colonized, or black countries, or countries of the global south, they are the most corrupt countries in the world compared to those European or Scandinavian countries or the former masters. These countries cannot afford to be corrupt. And if you watched the video last week, because of what's going on, the country have to work together to position itself. But when you have a few people, okay, that is abusing power in order to get ahead in life, it affects society. And we talk about income inequality, and we talk about corruption. We talk about there are various ways that people demonstrate their hegemony: corruption or white collar crime, and we talk about coercion with Russia and so on and so forth, and various other means. But so it's very important to study. So I said privileged position and status within the foundation of historical literature and divine intervention. So I said the answer. So the question is, so I said to you that what is it that will upend strategies of power by the status quo and the culture of violence, colonization, or strategy that has deepened our realities? The answer may lie in the exploration of the development of power, privilege, position, and status within the foundation of historical literature and divine intervention. I'm here talking about the foundations of knowledge and the hegemony of faith. Homer and Hesiod's theogony and the biblical stories provide a basis to begin to understand the problem and consequences of human dynamics in the development of human society. Rex Nettleford and Edith Clarke in My Mother Who Fathered Me, that they studied a society using a functionalist sociological approach. And just so you know, yes, they used they were functionalist sociologists, borrowing from a Eurocentric traditional view of studying families. I think in the 60s, they wanted to, the 70s or 80s or, sorry, actually it wasn't the 60s, it was in the 80s, 70s and 80s. They wanted to understand communities. And I think when I was studying those, and in 1999 and 2000, when I was studying Caribbean, I think Reverend Blossom White and did a reflection on that book and presented that in class, and we also utilized Harry Lambus, which is also looks at sociology but from a more functionalist approach within the Western civilization milieu. And when you start to, but when they looked at a society, study society, and they wanted to understand, why is it that these people behave the way they did? Why is it that why is it when you study family or the organizational unit in the Caribbean and organization, and I think here we go. This is it. Look at the organizational unit in the Caribbean. Of course, we talk about this Eurocentric ideology of family, how we view the family, the nuclear family, and of course within Orthodox Christianity, or within conservative Christianity, there is always the idea of the family, the picture of the family, and what the image of the family, and the image. When you think about, when I ask you, when you think about the family and the image of the family, what comes to mind when you think about that? The man, the woman, and the children. Man, woman, children. Of course, when you start to study in Caribbean, the extended family is important, but the extended family is important in all families, in almost all societies. It's okay, but they wanted to talk. But part of the issue within when you start to look at Caribbean and some Caribbean countries, to talk about this issue of, there were some societies where there were cousins getting involved with cousins. There was this issue of this concubinage. They said they were talking about concubinage and the issue of people shacking up, so to speak. And when you start to, and so Edith Clarke and Rex Nettleford wanted to understand, why is it that some people in certain communities practice certain form of organizational unit? Say, for example, how men and women cohabit, and the structure of the family is loose and varied and not structured within a particular way, within the standard, so to speak. And so the explanation was that, it is because people do not understand. You have to study what happened in Africa, because many of these people in Africa had an experience that the way how many Jamaicans today, in these cultures, the way they were cohabiting through concubinage and have a loose kind of arrangement and so on. When you study their sexual behavior and the organizational dynamic, where men have different live, and of course the men and some of the communities, the men would live in very different homes. There's no
for a local president. We hope to use the opportunity to facilitate a
Sorry about that, guys. Are you guys hearing me? You guys are hearing me, right? Yes? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Still there? Okay, good. All right, so let's finish. Let's finish this quickly. So as I was saying, that so it's very important that we begin to delve into the issues of the past, or delve into these foundations of knowledge and hegemony of faith and the cultures containing this hegemony. Let me say this again. The answer may lie in the exploration of the development of power, privilege, position, and status within the foundation of historical literature and divine intervention. Oh, sorry, I remember what I was talking about, where I was talking about the organizational dynamic that happened in terms of that Edith Clarke, the communities that Edith Clarke, the 4 communities that she studied, where they're the kind of family or structure that they practiced was different from the other parts of Jamaica that kind of promoted a nuclear kind of a family. And of course, but you have various pockets of this kind of loose family structure that Edith Clarke was referring to. But then when we try to, Rex Nettleford and Edith Clarke explained in their, Edith Clarke more so, explained that to understand their behavior is to understand what happens in Africa. But I have pushed back. I pushed back on that a bit. Because when you begin to study African culture, study African society, it would be unfair for Edith Clarke to try to explain or to apologize for the behavior or the organizational dynamic that pertains in this unit of family, and the kind of expressions and behavior that happens that pertains in this kind of family structure. It would be unfair to then say, oh, this kind of behavior comes from from our African heritage. And I say to you, I don't know what African society that Edith Clarke studied. That's what I'm going to say to you. Because when you read when you look, the only explanation I have is for why Edith Clarke in her book, My Mother Who Fathered Me, would want to explain that the kind of organizational unit that existed in these communities in Jamaica that practiced concubinage and a loose family arrangement. The only reason why she would look to Africa to say that, oh, this is what happened in Africa, is because she read it somewhere. She read it or studied it in an archive that was bent to demean and to redefine and to reinterpret African behavior as loose. Because we were told that Africans when the Europeans wanted to enslave the Africans, as I said to you, what did they first came up with? They pulled the theory that was on the back shelf that invented the idea of race as a biological theory or finding or fact. Suddenly it became evidence. Suddenly it became part of academia. And then they use that to justify, yes, the black race, create this idea of a black race. Africans at the time never think in terms of race. And I say to you, we have done an injustice to Africa as we try to find similarities and associations with Africa based on current understanding of self. But many of the similarities that what we did was to pull the books that other people wrote about Africa and that we have learned about Africa from people who don't live inside of Africa or don't understand African, people who practice participant observation from a Eurocentric, dominant functionalist view, ethnocentric view. Because when you look at how sociology has changed, okay? Sociology had a heavy-handed approach in terms of how it studied society. society was always studied from a very European perspective. Most of the sociologists that studied society was more from a European milieu or a white supremacist milieu that studied Africa in a very judgmental way. But then as we begin to understand, as studies and societies progressed and developed, we begin to understand more ethnocentrism and strategy and this idea, and then there is this drive to know you have more critical race theory, more Black people and Black academics now writing and trying to rediscover real truth. Talk about subaltern history from below. And I gave you the answer. History from below. The people who are affected by the very history do their own study and learn about things that other persons, when they study, would not have understood it. Okay. And I say to you that so we have to be careful about making similarities, because first of all, we use the word Africa or Africans in a broad brush. When you study African society, you cannot study African society in generality. You have to be very careful very careful, just as when you study Caribbean and when you study Jamaican. Say, for example, I said to you I was a student exchange when I was studying after I graduated from the seminary. I did 2 years ministerial formation with United Church in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. That's part of your study in order to become an ordained minister in the United Church in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, which is also part of the Church of Scotland. You have to go to do ministerial work in Scotland, or probably at one time you had to go to somewhere in the US, in Africa, wherever. I came to the US and that's where I did part of my ministerial formation. And it was quite interesting when I went to was a place in Missouri called somewhere in Missouri, and there were several students from all over the world. And when they approached me, they said, "You're from the Caribbean." I wasn't expecting this. I said, "What were you expecting?" That was the expectation, and there was also the expectation that being lazy and carefree. Of course, the idea of Caribbean being lazy, that's part of the narrative that you're being sold. We talk about, by the way, when you talk about the inductive argument and the deductive argument, we talk about the argument for truth. When you talk about when you're trying to a reasonable argument is measured based on how logical it is, and one of the ways you study the logic of an argument, you look at the devices that it utilizes. But say, for example, you talk about the deductive argument or the inductive argument, and those arguments, you can't find truth in some of those arguments, because you might have an experience about Jamaica by meeting several different Jamaicans, and you meet one Jamaican and it's different, or another Caribbean and it's different. So we have to be careful about painting a brush. And there were different, and of course, some Caribbean countries had different. When you study Arawaks to Africans, and when you read Arawaks to Africans, and there's a material that I have in here for you to read. When you study the material, you understand that not all Africans, not all Caribbean islands had the same group of Africans. Some came from the Congo, some came from another Kenya, and some people came from different parts of Africa to the Caribbean, depending. There were one group, especially in terms of Jamaica. I think they said that Jamaica is closely related to to the Ghana, I believe. And then there was also the Ivory Coast, and so all of these some of these cultures, some of these the African nations, some went to, depending on what African tribe or nation country you're from, you were rooted to a particular Caribbean island. And each African tribe, as much as many of them, the European painted a broad brush. And this is what pertains in African societies today. And then when we make comparisons with Caribbean islands, we also make the mistake of using a broad brush. But just so you know, we are told that Africans were primitive. Africans never had any religion. And when the images on TV, in the books that you read, when you start to look, even you open up books and they're writing about Africa, the African is always seen in a particular light. But just so you know, Africans never think about race, think in terms of race. They had always thought the thinking was in terms of tribe. They were tribal. So we have to be careful about, so I have to push back here by saying that, there were Africans there were Black African Jews that will practice a form of Judaism, practice a form of Christianity. Yes, but you will never read that until you start to sit down and study the archives and really start to study and read about what pertains in African cultures. Okay? Then you will understand that, oh, well, they had religion. They weren't primitive. Many of them they were cannibals. But now as you think about this, what is that really true? And the idea of cannibalism, sometimes the idea of cannibalism comes from ethnocentrism or not understanding a particular person's culture and making a valid judgment on that. Further, language, thought, and history become part of any examination and reflection of culture or thought involving philosophical inquiry. Again, language, thought, and history becomes part of any examination and reflection of culture involving philosophical inquiry. The Negro is not any more than the white man. Frantz Fanon in Black Skin, White Masks, Psychoanalysis of the Colonized, systematically controlled man and woman. We say he removed the dominant view within comparisons, striving for the empowered self. According to Homi Bhabha, here the familiar alignment of colonial control subjects is disturbed by a break, a pause from the usual to reveal a truly authentic self. Homi Bhabha, The Location of Culture, on Fanon. In fact, when we hear of Jamaica or the Caribbean, we think of beautiful islands of paradise with sun, sea, and sand, reggae music, cannabis, and airy people like Usain Bolt, people who are living out their best dreams, desires, and lives. But we have challenged this motif, given the historical and current economic and political situation in Jamaica and the Caribbean and the global South. I have said that in an attempt to escape the adverse realities of poverty, inequality, and justice, the people of the global South find themselves in North metropolises with very little agency and minimal change to their lives. In fact, except for the use of cleaning neoliberal waste, the immigrant is usually portrayed as an alien with 3 heads and big sharp teeth, seeking to steal and destroy the profit and disrupt society. So we definitely have to discuss Black, brown, and Pan-African struggles for economic prosperity, justice, and freedom. And we have to also consider efforts, abilities, or inabilities to chart our own or their own futures since decolonization and really realize real political independence and economic prosperity. And so I was reading, there is a film by, there's a song by The Ill Mind of Hobson 7. And in the song, he says, it's us, find power. It's us, find power. Live life, mind power. It's us, find power. Live life, mind power. And then the rap song the rap song is called Ill Mind of Hobson 7 by Hobson. He says, yo, and he uses an expletive. Anybody I might alarm. Life is a tour. I sit and ride along, taking some notes, and then I write the song. I'm starting down the road my life has gone. Is this where I belong? It is wrong to not believe in right and wrong. My mental state is messing me up, and I cry the pond while asking you for some answers, but we don't have that type of bond, that my desires gone with the way that I've been living lately. If I died right now, you turn the fire on. Sick of this bulls. And he uses the L word, and they say, brothers, call me a sellout, because I hopped on Christianity. Notice he said, his brothers, he became a Christian. He says, I hopped on Christianity so strongly, then I fell out. I guess, backslidden. Now I'm avoiding questions like a sacred dog with his tail down, feeling so humiliated because they're looking at me like I'm hellbound. What story should I tell now? I'll just expose the truth. I'm so close to the edge. I should be close to you. But who are you? You never showed the proof. Am I only human? What am I supposed to do? There's way too many different religions with vivid descriptions, begging all men and women to listen. I can't even, well, I won't even, let's skip. And he goes on and on and on and on and on. Quite an interesting story, but this is Ill Mind of Hobson 7. It's a rapper, and there's a song that says the Ill Mind of Hobson 7. He was a Christian. I don't know if he still is. I think he kind of is. I don't know what has happened with his life, but he was going through a difficult period. And I said to Hobson rap suggests that he's at a place where he is experiencing critical thinking at work. I would play the song for you, but it's full of expletives, and so I won't do that. But Hobson rap suggests that he's at a place where he is experiencing critical thinking at work. You see, that's what happened when you begin to expose oneself and think critically. It clashes with belief and that you once had held, because those beliefs came to you from a top-down approach with no ability to question them for yourselves, which locks your mind in a particular reality until you are able to break free from that. When you're able to, it challenges you to a point of distress and frustration. But that is good, because it means now you are open to tremendous possibilities and the understanding of all things beyond any particular perspective that were borrowed at best and had monopolized the mind so as to make it complicit and a willing participant in external abuse. This is what we must guard against, which is why we should develop the individual so that he or she can think for him or herself without the possibility of being hijacked. As we think about privilege, power, position, and status within the development of human society over time and the challenges they pose for progress, critical thinking, and communication, and the Caribbean, then it becomes critical thinking becomes absolutely necessary, because knowledge, or the ability to think critically while having access to information that is decentralized and demonopolized mean decontrolling, are key to augmenting, increasing the individual so as to escape external manipulation and discrimination. I'm going to say that again. As we think about privilege, power, position, and status within the development of human society over time and the challenges they pose for progress, critical thinking and communication become absolutely necessary, because knowledge, or the ability to think critically while having access to information that is decentralized and demonopolized, decontrolling. Decentralized is dispersed, okay? And moving from something that is moving from the vertical to the horizontal, moving from a pyramid to one that's more flat, okay? That's what we're talking about, decentralized. demonopolize, decontrol are key to augmenting the individual so as to avert external manipulation and discrimination. And not just the individual, the Caribbean. Now, as we think about how to protect against disinformation and manipulative power, while we realize effective communication, which is to make popular what was the monopoly, critical thinking becomes paramount. When others seek to create laws and policies or regulatory methods, which would suggest that people can think for themselves, we are about facilitating learning geared towards augmenting thinking that do the critical thinking that is needed to filter news, narratives, and perspectives. More laws and regulations do not necessarily change anything, such as, they more than anything centralize ownership and limit access, which then create or expand an underground market that people can still have access to. Now, I'm going to stop there because there's more to that, because this is not what I wanted to talk about right here. I wanted to go deeper and delve into this. Actually, I should. This is about critical thinking. This is perfect. Now, recently, former President Barack Obama, some time ago, said, the way I'm going to evaluate any proposal touching on social media and the internet is whether it strengthens or weakens the prospects for healthy, inclusive democracy. He went on to say that as part of this, tech platform need to recognize that they play a unique role in how people consume information, and their decisions have impact on everyday aspects of society. Now, this is important, what I'm going to say to you here, that critical thinking is necessary as we think about what's going on in society today. And we talk about it's very important that we teach people critical thinking. It's very, because news agencies and people who want to remonopolize are trying to regulate information through various means. Of course, the Caribbean, one of the things that I love about Caribbean is that there's just freedom of expression. True media freedom is practiced in the Caribbean. They don't have this monopoly and this bureaucracy and control in media as they have in other parts of the world. Now, facilitating critical thinking is necessary. What is critical thinking? It is thinking about thinking and what was previously or is the current thought that build or debunk information that leads to new discoveries of thought and positions that improve life. It is deliberate and intentional, reflecting on truths. Challenging self, whether through introspective discourse or engagement with others. Critical thinkers aren't born, for critical thinking is a skill and vocation that is developed over time. To do critical thinking is to do analysis. It is looking at things in a metaphysical way. It dissects and does surgery. It is a way of thinking that looks at patterns in action and explore thoughts. It examines and evaluates what is the obvious and what is not. It does not take sides. It involves having trained ears and eyes that hear and see far and wide. Critical thinking is developed through the training of the mind to think in a certain way, as it is explorative thinking. It challenges your own thinking and beliefs. It uses logic, common sense, and reason. It benefits from expansive thoughts and sequencing of present and past knowledge. It builds on past information. Critical thinking which is what is necessary in Caribbean thought, is coherent and clear. It follows the laws of logic and reason. It is fair and open. It is sharp and cut. It goes deep and deeper, but it is focused and direct. Okay? Now, Newtonian physics, Kant, Descartes, Sigmund Freud, and more of all of these people promote a kind of critical thinking within skepticism. The need for critical thinking was the drive for those to make a privilege endeavor where only a few exposed to the ability to read and write could make sense of it. The need for critical thinking was the drive for those to make a privileged endeavor where only a few was exposed to the ability to read and write could make sense of it. Was to undo that so that it is exposed. Again, the need for critical thinking was the drive of those to make the drive of those. We're talking about Sigmund, many people like Frantz Fanon and so on and so forth, to make a privilege, not a privilege, to make it popular. That's the drive for critical thinking. Critical education was reserved for the few so that the few may have something to lord over the others, or that the truth contained would challenge standards that protect the position of the few. This touches every aspect of society, not just politics, but church, sports, entertainment, and technology. Now, you know, a Phi Beta Sigma fraternity Black brother of mine revealed to me how he became a social work case manager instead of a computer tech expert. Because when he was in college, he had to change majors. He said that he had to do so because he did not go to a high school math class that adequately prepared him for the college program in computer technology that he wanted to do. His public school, that was predominantly Black, provided a watered-down education so that he could not access the training required to realize a dream of better. He was exposed to an education that was acceptable and would continue to keep him and his peoples down. This is the kind of economic system we have, one that distributes resources in society inequitably or unevenly based on race and forgetting the past that has affected the competitive value of the Black man. And that's very important. So, I mean, there is much more for me to say on this matter, but I wanted to highlight a very important issue, the need for critical thinking. Now, one of the questions we will ask for the class is, who really rules the world? Who really rules the world? Which is one of the questions we will ask. And as we think about the issue of masculinity and femininity when we begin, this is an issue of power. And William Domhoff in 2010 suggested in his book, Who Rules America? Challenges to corporate and class dominance. He said it was corporations and their transnational rules the world. Okay, and their ability to penetrate. Here the word penetration is a very important word when we talk about this masculine position of power, the ability to penetrate. When the Caribbean when we talk about breaking down barriers, they had to break down barriers so that they can penetrate, but they weren't supposed to penetrate. The Caribbean was woman. The global north was man. When you think about those tropes, the issue of penetration, you see where I'm going here. The study would consider not just neoliberal elites, globalist tactics, but will consider the challenge to Western power and their global elites. William Domhoff in 2010, in his book, Who Rules America, challenges to, and by America, not just the US, but the Americas, challenges to corporate and class dominance. He said that it was corporations and they're transnational. Further, Charles Perrow in his book, Organizing America, Wealth, Power, and the Origins of Corporate Capitalism in 2010, shows how American corporations became the dominant and overarching force and feature in American life, and by extension, the American life in the Caribbean, and that which extends from it. And they're transnational. Okay? So as I was saying, I don't know, there's a video that keeps playing in the background. I don't know why. I have to so we talk about sorry, I was at the point where looking at power poses problem to progress, who rules the world. Power poses problem to progress, who rules the world. This is part of a wider presentation, but because we don't have time and trying to hurry up with this particular lecture. Now, as we continue to look at the issue of power and who rules the world, and the Caribbean within that world, William Domhoff in 2010 in his book Who Rules America challenges the corporate class dominance that they call corporations and their ability to penetrate. Your ability to penetrate characterizes your power. Okay, and we talk about the issue of penetration and the problem that penetration poses to the Caribbean even today, how their economies are flooded. And it's not just in terms of products, but in terms of ideology and information. If I were to ask you, how much time okay, let me ask you guys a question. How much time do you guys spend on watching, if you were to compare how much time you spend watching American TV or watching and reading American media or the media from the US and overseas as against media in Jamaica? How much time do you guys, how do you find that? How much time do you guys spend when you compare it? Do you spend more time on American media or less time on American media? Poetic. So you have ever thought of doing, I'm going to Africa with us to have the first and real of our descendants. I said my apologies. Okay. Somebody asked some good questions between narcissism, which is now defined as Trumpism. If you want to find, give me a good example of narcissism. People always point to Donald Trump. And colonialism. And somebody wants to know if there's a correlation between narcissism and I'm going to ask what you guys think. I want to know what you guys think. I have an answer for this question because I actually am writing a chapter in one of my DLS papers that speaks to narcissism and colonialism. So, but before we get to that, let's finish. The question is in terms of your TV and media time, how much time is spent on American media against local media? I need, yes.
When you look at Netflix, what is that an American thing, right? Netflix. Sorry? Yes. When you look at Netflix, I spend more time on Netflix than anything else than Jamaican media.
Say that again.
I will spend more time on Netflix. That is an American thing there than actually my Jamaican thing there. So to be honest.
Okay. If I were to do a poll and ask the class, do you guys spend more time? Okay, fine. Let's do a poll. Let's do it right now. I want to know your opinion. Let's do a poll. Let's stop sharing this poll and let's ask. Let's go back. Let's do another poll. Do you spend more or less time on American media compared to local media, everything media, social media, TV, news, so on and so forth, videos you watch. US on local, about the same. All the time on US, all the time on local. Okay, there we go. How much time do you spend on local versus US media? We're gonna take a break for a quick second. I'm having a problem. Please give me 2 minutes. We'll be right back. We'll take a break and we come back at 9:20. I have too many things open on my computer. I'm gonna close some of these things, and then we'll be back at 9:20, and I'll pick up from where I left off. But I'm gonna try and still do the poll. So if you see a poll pops up, it means okay, just answer the poll. I want to find out your screen time in terms of how much time you spend on local media to US media. And I want to get an understanding in terms of the class and your media time. And then I'm going somewhere with that. Okay, I'm going somewhere with that because we talk about influence and penetration. There are many ways that people penetrate other countries, and I said to you, it's not just through products and so on, but it's also ideologies. Okay, and I said to you earlier, what's going on in TV? You find a lot of women. If you go on Netflix and go and movies now, it's a lot of major stars. There's this drive by Hollywood and some people to promote black stars, to promote women in movies, and so on and so forth. But that's, of course, that's more from in terms of the US picture. But let's bring it home to Jamaica and the Caribbean and the fact that the staple of media presence, the power, the dominance of American media and cinema, okay? And they just talk, by the way, they just talk about TikTok, which maybe I get some time to talk quickly about that before we end, about what's going on in TikTok. And also ask you this question about this legislation around sexual identity and what you think about that. As a Jamaican looking and based on our ideas and what we understand and our perspective, what do you feel about DeSantis in Florida? A lot of Jamaicans live in Florida. DeSantis, who is now passing legislation here in Florida, as that forces teachers to only in classroom to only teach to only refer to children's sex based on the sex that they were born with. Now, who determines that? And it's only so they just drive to be inclusive. They just drive to be inclusive. But people say you can't, depending on how you present yourself to people or how you interact with people, there's this appreciation for the individual. The individual determines how he wants to be approached, how he wants to be treated. And so there is this new drive and thrust for that. So there is this question that people ask now, him or her. I mean, how do you identify? What pronouns do you use? So they want to get rid of that. No. So they want to get rid of that complication, they call it. Just complication. And so and prevent this, they call it woke ideology that promotes a particular kind of, and I'm not interested in your opinion as to whatever. What I'm interested in is how you process your conclusion, how you arrive at your conclusion, and where that conclusion come from. Okay, how you argue or come to your point. Okay, and what influences do you have? Okay, the experiences you have. So that is what I'm interested in. Okay. And so that's what is important. That's what is important here. So we talk about the issue of penetration, and even within economics, the issue of penetration is an issue of power. The issue of penetration is the issue of power. Okay? And so that is important. So when we talk about, so earlier I said to you, I want to talk about the issue of masculinity, the issue of sexuality, which I have a whole lecture prepared for that, which I really haven't started yet. But I have the lecture notes, which I will send to you, that talks about the issue of Sodom and Gomorrah. And that's very important. Please remember, we're talking about power and penetration. And I ask you, how many of you watch American media and how much time you spend on American media compared to your local media? Okay. By the way, there is also this saying in Caribbean, when Caribbean people leave and go to the US and they come back, they say, oh, you turn foreigner now, you change your twang. And, Louis Bennett have a song that says, not even little twang, not even, there is an expectation, the expectation of you. Okay. They expect, even those, your own people expect you to be affected by that penetration, in a sense. But in a sense, the effect of penetration, the effect of you being overcome, okay, by certain information, sometimes is looked down upon, in a sense. In a sense, because you have been exposed and you have been imposed upon. You've been imposed upon, in a sense. So when you study Caribbean and Caribbean thought, I said to you, what the diverse currents that have affected Caribbean, what have penetrated our thinking? What has affected the thinking? When you talk about, where we're just talking about who rules the world. But I was trying to find, and there's a particular reason why I asked the question. So I am going to try and do the poll, take a break, and then we come back. We spend the last 15 minutes to wrap up the class. And the last couple of minutes, we're going to look quickly at period poverty with Shelley and Meeks. And then we will wrap up with that discussion of period poverty and the challenges that Caribbean people have in terms of girls and their sexuality, and how the male dominant society affect that, the drive to end period poverty. Yes? We'll be right back after this. We'll be back at 9:30. Okay, we'll be back at about 9:30. And then I will share the poll with you. So the poll is up and running now. And so you guys can participate. The poll is media watch and stream time. How much more time do you spend watching media? And this is over 50% on the US. And please be honest with yourself, okay? When we talk about media time, we talk about social media as well: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Netflix, HBO, Cinemax, Hulu is American, American cable TV, and even in terms of the local TV, notice I said local media, because you could be watching TVJ. I don't know if they still have TVJ. Do they still have TVJ? You could be watching TVJ, or do they still have CVM? I think it was radio television one time. You guys can tell me the answer later when we come back in a couple of minutes. I don't know what's going on in terms of media, in terms of do we still have TVJ? And it was JBC one time, and I think JBC became TVJ, and then there was CVM. I don't know if we still have CVM, but many of them carry Jamaican American shows, okay, or foreign shows as well. You know, MacGyver. I used to watch MacGyver, you know, and Perry Mason, Matlock. Ask me what Jamaican shows I watch. Can't remember some of them because my mind is inundated by American streaming stuff. But we'll be right back after this, guys. And then when we come back, we'll have a quick discussion about that and how it and the effect of this. And then I will try and wrap up the section on power, and then read Genesis chapter 1, verse 19. Give you some quick insight as to Genesis 1:19 and how Caribbean theology interprets that, and what interpretation influences that, and how that biblical passage affect sexual identity and sexual relations in society. Okay. And the idea of power again is important. Power, the ability to penetrate. Okay. And how the idea of masculinity and how the man is perceived is affected his power. You don't want to affect the power. Anything that affects the power dynamics, that there is a backlash. You talk about power dynamic in society. Okay? The power dynamic in society. The man as powerful. The man as impenetrable. Okay? Impenetrable. The man has impenetrable. The man does the penetration. The masculine man, and we talk about the slaves, they were devoid of their masculinity. They were devoid. They were devoid of man. They weren't allowed to be fathers. They weren't allowed. There's something that they were devoid of. Okay. The only thing that in terms of penetration that could happen was coital penetration to mass produce. Okay. But even that was a problem. And sometimes many of the Mandingo was job was to mass produce, and he was given a special place and taken care of properly. Okay. But at the same time, he was beaten and whipped and harangued, okay, to a pulp, because he was looked down upon, the Mandingo who was penetrating and impregnating, in a sense, the suspicious man, Caucasian or plantocracy. They are suspicious of that. So if you study plantation society, you'll see where in a sense the Mandingo and the man. Okay, the only thing that defines his masculinity was his ability to penetrate. But then what happened was that that was looked down upon. That was scoffed. That was one thing that the plantocrat was suspicious of. And so, you look at you look in these societies and how they were beaten and harangued and abused, because fine, you're penetrating, so we are going to abuse you. Okay? Because of that little power that you have that defined your power, your masculinity, that ability to penetrate the other slaves in order to produce more slaves. That was a problem. But it was a necessity, because they needed that slave to do that. And so they developed, so if you look at punishment was meted out to the slave in some senses for no reason, just because to reassert the dominance. Yes, you could penetrate, but please remember that there's something that you can do. But this issue is very important. But when you bring that to economics and to the global world, in terms of who ruled the world, the person that has the ability to penetrate without restriction, to penetrate, to demonstrate the masculinity, that masculine stance, that powerful stance. So even as you think about the idea of if you think about the issue of power and say, for example, the issue of rape, okay? That is when you think about rape, they said many rape cases is a result of power, okay? And as you think about that corruption of the corruption of man's position and a reinterpretation or a constant promotion of life to privilege his position to the point of justifying even rape to do his penetration because a man is supposed to do. And so when you think about it, even in a socioeconomic sense, in terms of comparing Caribbean to the global South or to former colonial masters, you think about it in terms of a woman and a man. Okay, so this is quite interesting. But we'll be right back. Oh wow, I said I'd be back at 9:30, and I was talking the entire time. I didn't take a break. I need to take a quick 5 minutes break, and then I come back and we wrap up. But so far, only 58% of you have participated. Media watch and stream time. How much more time do you spend watching media? Okay, I am gonna answer. I can't answer. Okay, I'll be right back. We'll be back at 9:35 in 3 minutes. Since you guys, some of you have already started the break. So excuse me, we'll be back in 3 minutes. And when we come back, we will see the results of the poll. I will wrap up about 5 or 10 minutes looking at the issue of power and hegemony. We didn't really touch on that. There's a lecture for that too, but that's fine. Most of the lessons are introductory, and then I will wrap up by playing a quick excerpt of the interview I had with Shirley talking about period poverty. We'll be right back. And when you talk about, by the way, I'm about to share my screen. Somebody had asked about feminism. When we talk about feminism, feminism is about the equality, talk about equality, okay, commonality between sexes in terms of equal pay. It's a socio-political concept. It's a socio-political concept, okay, that extends from sociology to economics and many other institutes. And of course, when we talk about feminism, part of feminism is brushed with critical thinking or kind of skepticism, the kind of thinking that Kant would provide. Okay, when we talk about feminism, they are critical of institutions, because we talk about Foucault study institutions and looks Michel Foucault talks about how institutions help to promote a particular kind of knowledge that sustains the status quo. He talks about this kind of traditionalism, and they're wary of institution or institutionalism. So feminists are, in some respect, wary of institutions that promote a kind of hegemony, a kind of masculinity, a kind of traditionalism and conservatism that is against inclusion and equality, and that use language that demeans women or put down women or see women as second class. When I talk about, we no longer think about Caribbean as third world, okay? We use a different kind of language that promote, okay? Language that value the individual, irrespective of who he is, his gender, his sex, his person, whatever, okay? We use inclusive. That's what that feminism is, part of that whole milieu of thinking, okay? That tries for those persons who were usually discriminated against based on their gender or sex or whatever it might be, then feminism in a sense speaks to the issue of equality, equal pay, equal access to opportunity, and so on and so forth. So that's what we are talking about. And so when we talk about the church and the position of the woman within the church, and especially within Jamaican or Caribbean churches, depending on the kind of faith, because there are some faith that follows American doctrines, and many at sometimes the National Church of God and the Church of God. A lot of these religious institutions have headquarters in the U.S. Okay, that helps to promote a kind of theology, okay, that is in a sense a top-down approach. The understanding of the doctrine of the faith, the understanding, the doctrine, the doctrinal position comes to some churches in the Caribbean whose headquarters is in another country. Okay, but feminism in some the Brethren Church, in a sense, a lot of feminists are against the Brethren Church, because the Brethren Church, I don't know if they have changed that. But the question I asked for the poll is media watch and stream time, and I asked that for a particular region. How much more time do you spend watching media? Everybody participated. That's great. Over 50% on the US. 6 out of 50% of you, which is 6 out of 12. Majority of you spend most of your time, or over 50% of your time, on your stream time or media time, watching US media or channels or programming and so on and so forth. And it says about the same time 3. So majority of you spend most of the time. So, and if I were to ask many Jamaicans that, especially Jamaica, and when you look at Jamaica, we talk about access to technology, and those people who live in Kingston as against those who live outside of Kingston or outside of rural Jamaica, and access to technology, and so on and so forth. Probably the responses might be a little bit different. But once you have access to media or to technology, of course, then that's usually what has happened. When I ask this question to different groups of people from the diaspora or people who are from the Caribbean, it's always the same. Majority of the people and majority of Jamaicans, and even what's happening with TikTok, And I say to people, it is ludicrous. It is nonsense. And you guys can read the paper I wrote, to the blog or the poster, and the conversations I had about the issue of TikTok being the ban on TikTok. Is it a ban against China, or is it a ban against the new rising rich? You know, so, and that's a very important question. Is it a ban against China or the ban against the new rising rich? You know, that's a very important question. But when you look at the issue of, let's go back to where we were just now, what we were discussing about power and the issue of power as we wrap up this class quickly. I don't have time to wrap it up, but we'll leave wherever we will leave, where we will table the discussions for a later date. But of course, you will have access to all of these resources even after the class, where you can peruse, look back over, and utilize in your own experiences, journals and writings and so on. But this is important. I said to you before I left the class, looking at the issue of power, who rules? The question was, who rules the world? At what one time it was corporations, and we talk about the ability to penetrate and so on and so forth, which is an ability that many Caribbean countries don't really have. And if they do have it, they have to go over hurdles. Now, I say to you, who rules corporations if they rule America? That's the question. And as the origin of corporate capitalism shows how American corporations are and became the dominant and overarching force and feature in American and Caribbean worldline. But and this is important. But the next question is, who rules corporations? If corporations rule America, who rules corporations if they rule it? And I say to you, China. That was the initial. That was what I had said. China. And this was but after careful consideration, it would seem that the world now has two global challenges. One is in Europe, Putin and Russian aggression. Second is China and Asia, and the push to become a new superpower. China and Russia are socialist countries with a kind of totalitarian system of government, while the West is seeking to develop partnerships and to rule by neoliberal strategy, which pivots to corporate greed that is not easily detected. Pivot to corporate greed that is not easily detected. The East, China, Russia, is still living in the past, using past values of a world that use intimidation and aggression to realize its goal of world domination. So as we look at neoliberal globalist tactics and the effects on the global south and vulnerable groups, we are also met with the question, who rules America becomes even broader, and who rules the world? And we have suggested that it is global elites across countries, even though China and Russia have their own personal national interests, that defies this. But there are elites in Russia and China who form and are part of the ruling interests in these. Now, I won't say any more about that because I don't want to go off on a different tangent. But the important issue is this is why it is so difficult to apply any real sanctions to Russia, for example, Russia until now, because all of these post-industrial country elites have interests with each other and are careful not to sabotage that through any sanctions that may affect their business interests and wealth and their domination. This has to be part of the consideration as we delve into power, which poses problems for human progress, for Caribbean progress, looking at privilege, power, position, and status. But if I say to you at the beginning of the class, when you look at Genesis chapter 1 verse 19, and I won't get into Genesis 1 verse 19, it looks at Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot and Abraham. And there's a story that speaks to the fact that there were some angels who had visited Lot's home, visited the place where Lot was staying in Sodom and Gomorrah. And if I were to ask the interpretation of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's very important. And I whenever I want to talk about ideologies and Caribbean theology, I always begin with this particular scripture, Genesis 1:19, and the understanding of it by Caribbean people, and our theology and how and our perspective and our experience affect the theology, and the theology affect the experience, and our understanding of the dominant, of the masculine, of masculinity, and of sexuality. The understanding is that Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed because of sin. And if you were to have discussions with many Jamaicans, they say that, oh, it's because men were having sex with men. But of course, that's not the issue. It would study Sodom and Gomorrah, and people are not sure of whether or not Sodom and Gomorrah existed. But the story of Sodom and Gomorrah with Lot, walking into in a city they don't belong. Okay, apparently the understanding is that some young men had committed a crime. There's a story about Lot. One of Lot's sons had done something wrong, and there were visitors in the home at the time. And the story is that the men in the community in Gomorrah, Sodom and Gomorrah, came to Lot's home and said, "Hey, for what you have done, bring out the men out in your home so that we can get to know them." When you study the word, look at the Hebrew word to know them. It says so that we can penetrate them, so that we can have sex with them. Okay, so that particular story speaks, and you can go back and revisit the story, and you can do your own. And when you study, don't just read the scriptures. You have to read several and then study the story surrounding that, because there are many stories surrounding that scripture. It's a Hebrew story. The Hebrews told the story. But when you look at the way the story is told, these are people telling a story, promoting themselves about another set of people. So when you look at these stories, you have to look at who's telling the story and how they are privileging themselves. And I talk about looking at the foundation of historical knowledge, okay, and looking at the history, how the history of the foundation of knowledge and the development of that from one generation to the next, and how various peoples and groups in society compete for dominance, for doctrinal dominance. Jews for Jesus, Jews not for Jesus, or whatever religion of the day is. So the tradition Hebrew story, which is it's only found in Hebrew. In the Hebrew story, when you study history, there's nowhere else where you find the city existing, but the Hebrews tell this story. But many Jamaicans use this particular story, and even within the laws of our land contain this particular understanding of masculinity and sexuality. Masculinity comes from this understanding. But here it is that these men say, bring out the men. We want to know that we want to have intercourse with the men in your home. And listen to what Lot said. No. Here is my virgin daughter. I'll give you my one virgin daughter. Now, it goes to show the value that biblical society, even within Lot's mind, that these society placed on women. Lot said, no. These men said, bring out the men, but Lot said, no. I will give you my virgin daughter. You can get to know her. You can do with what you want to do with her. It speaks, and when you look at this, the problem in this particular situation is a very deep issue when you start to study it. And then you ask, and of course, if and I pastored a church in Jamaica, several churches in Jamaica before, and I've had some opportunity to discuss this particular topic and people's understanding of sexuality and the fact that Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed because of rampant sin, because men were being penetrated by other men. But that was the dominant trope. But of course, it was more than that. It was other things happening. But more so, it says, but the Hebrew privileged themselves in the story by talking about how these people were, how the place was destroyed by the angels or by God because of sin. But of course, what sin? There were several kinds of sin, but the particular sin that takes primacy here within many Caribbean countries is the sin of men having sex with men, because there is the issue of masculinity. But this particular story also speaks to the value that society has always placed on women, so much so the issue wasn't about a particular sex, but it was about looking at the dynamic of women and how women are treated in society, and how this society, this Hebrew scripture, that promotes Hebrew position in the world and understanding in the world, how that has been incorporated within the dominant Caribbean society. Okay, so that speaks to the issue of and how that has affected society in a significant way. Now, I only have 3 minutes for the class, which is crazy. Because I wanted to share. I won't be able to share the recording I have for you. But let me see. I don't think I'm going to try and share the screen. But there is a probably I could try it. I don't think I have time for it. But Shelly-Ann Weeks of the Herflow Foundation, she's trying to end period poverty. And period poverty is defined as inadequate access to menstrual hygiene tools and education, including but not limited to sanitary products, washing facilities, and waste management. While the term period poverty is relatively new in medical literature, menstrual hygiene management has been discussed decades in the context of the gender gap in education for youth living in low and middle income countries. And I got this information from the Center for CHOP, for Policy Lab, the Center for Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania, Policy Lab. Now, such as, let me continue with the article. It says, such as those in the global south, in the Caribbean, or formerly third world countries, and vulnerable people, such as Black and brown people living in post-industrial cities and places in the world. The problem of period poverty is not just a Caribbean problem, but it is an international experience, mostly by those who are Black or brown, where they live in poverty and lacking resources. 5 minutes, let me wrap up. Period poverty affects educational outcomes and opportunities for advancement, especially among our girls, because period poverty affects mostly girls. Biologically, the drive to end period poverty has been slow. That's according to the executive director of Herflow Foundation, who is working to end period poverty in Jamaica. Now, according to a 2014 United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, 1 out of every 10 menstruating youth misses school during their menstrual cycle due to lack of access to menstrual products and resources. For example, menstruators in developing parts of the world, such as sub-Saharan Africa, are prone to using paper and clothes, leaves, cotton, or wool piece rather than more traditional menstrual products like disposable pads or tampons. Many schools in developing nations have insufficient toilets and inadequate privacy measures, as well as poor water, sanitation, and hygiene infrastructure, making it difficult for students to safely manage their menstrual cycle. Now, what do we know about period poverty in the Caribbean and in Jamaica in particular? And so, therefore, it was quite interesting when I had an interview with this particular young woman. But she's not that young. I think we're the same age. From the Herflow Foundation, which exists to empower women and girls about reproductive health through education and mentorship. The Her Flow Foundation exists to empower women and girls about reproductive health through education and mentorship. Now, their flagship project is to end period poverty, which is the inability to afford menstrual products when needed in Jamaica. They focus most of their work in schools, ensuring that girls don't miss classes because of period poverty. So far, they have donated nearly 5 million period products. Okay. Now, did you know that 44% of girls in Jamaica are affected? 44%. I'm telling you, guys, 44% of girls in Jamaica are affected by period poverty. And of this figure, 24% drop out due to period poverty. Period poverty isn't just a female issue, but should also be a man's issue. New Zealand and Netherlands have made ending period poverty a priority by providing resources to girls free of cost. But what about countries like Jamaica? What has been the policy and the national drive to deal with the challenge that period poverty poses, such as productivity, dropouts, because it affects worker productivity, especially when you find a large section of the population, working population, is made up of, consisted of women in the Caribbean, especially in the formal sector. The formal sector, women, informal sector, men, okay? What has been the policy and national drive to deal with the challenge that period poverty poses, such as productivity, worker productivity we're talking about, dropouts, gender inequality, stigma, this is very important, the stigma around women's health and the health-related issues that may stem from doing nothing. I'm going to say to you guys as we wrap up, you will be surprised to know that many of the schools in Jamaica and poorer countries are church-sponsored, and as such, their theology prevents effective response to the issue and challenges surrounding sexual and reproductive health and the diluted or non-existent national policy in these countries on ending period poverty and women's and or reproductive and sexual health, which also affects the building of the human capital. I'm going to say this again. This is the last point I'm going to say. Well, hopefully it is, but some of you are stepping out already, but this is the last point. You will be surprised to know that many of the schools in Jamaica and poorer countries are church-sponsored, and as such, their theology, and of course in Jamaica, there's no separation between church and state in Jamaica and many places in the Caribbean. There's no separation. And so we said that you will be surprised to know that many of the schools in Jamaica and poorer countries are church-sponsored, and as such, here is Caribbean thought now. Their theology prevents effective response to the issue and challenges surrounding sexual and reproductive health and the diluted or non-existent national policy in these countries on ending period poverty and women's and or reproductive and sexual health, which also affects the building of the human capital. And I said to you earlier, period poverty is not just a woman's issue, it's a man's issue. I discussed this, including Shelley and Weeks' secret to losing nearly 100 pounds, resolving major health-related issues, and her fearlessness in the daunting task with little help, and a Jamaican culture, a Caribbean culture that discriminates against women's health, and the religions that assumes the negative side of femininity and masculinity. The negative side of femininity and masculinity. I'm going to say this again. A culture resolving the daunting task of ending period poverty and providing awareness with little help within a culture that discriminates against women's health, and the religious that assumes the negative side of femininity and masculinity. It was deep. It was deep, and I don't have time to get into it. And so I'm going to probably, you can go onto the neoliberal.com and you can type in Herflow Foundation or Shelley and Weeks and you'll see it. But, and I wish I could share that with you. Actually, it's not available. Is it available? Oh yeah, it is available. Is it available on YouTube? No, it is not available on YouTube. But those are some of the issues that we have to contend with. And that's why I say to you, if we are going to really deal with the issue of Caribbean, we too have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be honest. And people are afraid to do critical thinking because people don't like to be challenged. People are afraid of of being challenged. And so and I said to you some time ago, I was supposed to teach contemporary theology. No, we're not going to indoctrinate the students. My job is not to indoctrinate you. My job is to be honest with what is happening in society and to provide you the opportunity by providing you with information and perspective that is wide, one that does not look only at the conservative. But okay, yes, question from someone. I see. Yes, who is that? Somebody have a question? Are you guys hearing me? Somebody said they're having bad connection.
So we're hearing you, but nobody's speaking.
I know today everybody is quiet today, and that's fine. Everybody's quiet today. I'm not sure. Today you are quiet today, guys. Everybody's under the weather, but that's where we will. What I want to do is I really wanted to spend at least to share 5 minutes of this video with you guys, for people who can stay. I really, really want you to see a little bit of it because it's really powerful. It's a really powerful story. And I was actually at the Liberal Corporation. I did an interview with this, and I actually spoke with my class about this some time ago. That is Miss Shelley and Weeks of the Herflow Foundation. Let's just play a little bit of it.
And a very, very difficult period. And I, struggled with a lot of cramps and pain and, very heavy periods, sometimes 11 days long. And when I was diagnosed with fibroids when I was about 33, 34, I tried as an experiment to change the way I eat because my doctor was saying to me that I have to do this major surgery. And I was dreading trying to do this surgery. I've done major surgeries in my life. I was dreading the whole process. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try this thing as an experiment. And I changed my relationship with food. It's the best decision I've ever made. I'm no longer having painful periods. My periods are 2 days long now. I don't have any pain or discomfort at all. And I started Herflow because I wanted to shout it from the rooftops. I wanted women to know we don't have to be living in pain.
Yes.
Pain is a part of our life story from we are girls until we become older women. We are living with pain, and you hear people say things like women are bred to feel pain, and I just find those things insulting because what happens is you end up having to deal with pain so much that you think that it's supposed to be a part of being woman. And so, I really, really try hard in my work to educate women and girls that they do not have to live in pain, that your body can be a place of peace and pleasure and great joy. And, it is my life's work to educate us, especially Black women, educate us about the wonders of our body and what we can do with it and how it can help us to live full, meaningful lives.
Yes.
We don't have enough time for me to tell you what makes me tick.
Yes. But and just so you know,
And just so you know, when we the recording started just towards the end. So I apologize. We missed the part where you are from. Jeffreytown, St. Mary?
Jeffreytown, St. Mary. I grew up in Jeffreytown, St. Mary. I don't know if GPS has it or nothing. It's a little tiny town. And you know, in Jamaica, when they have PA in the address, you know, it's real country. So it's Jeffreytown, PA, St. Mary.
Yes.
So, you know, it's a post office, postal agency. So, you know, it's a real country town. And yeah, I was just saying that I grew up with my great-grandmother. And we had to get up in the morning and catch water before we got school. We had to feed the chicken and tie out the goats and make sure the animals are taken care of. We go outside to play. We didn't have a bunch of screens to be watching.
Yes.
We had to get creative and make our toys. The boys used to make trucks with juice box, take juice box and bottle stoppers.
Yes,
and make trucks. And
I remember that.
We used to use rope and tie swings on the trees. And you know, it was a very outdoor. You bruise up your foot. I mean, if you go through a week,
right? Indeed, yes.
You're not playing hard enough. So you know, it was a very fun childhood. And you said that you had a very fun childhood when you talk about growing up in a very small bucolic area in Jamaica, Jeffreytown. You talk about the goat and tell me. And I said to what did you guys? You said it was fun, but we talk about. I said earlier at the show before we started the recording that in Jamaica has about 14,000 people live in poverty. 14,000 people live in poverty in Jamaica. And that's in 2018, and it has grown. And since COVID, we said there are more people in abject poverty and so on and so forth. And tourism, Jamaica depends heavily on tourism. And about 50,000 people were laid off, and Jamaicans spend more than 50% of their income trying to purchase food. But the question is, did you talk about your experience? Did you feel as if you were poor? Well, I'm not quite sure. You know, when you say poverty, I think there's a specific number around the poverty.
They were saying $2.50 per day.
Say it again?
I know in the United, I think UN gold was still that at one time it was $2.50 per day, earning $2.50 per day.
$2.50 US a day. All right, well, I don't know what my the adults around me earned at the time. But what I will say to you is that we always had food to eat. Everybody went to school. We always had other things that we needed to go to school.
Yes.
We always we had everything that we needed. We didn't have we weren't taking trips overseas a lot. We weren't doing that. But if we were sick, we were able to go to the doctor. Yes. I'm not quite sure what ruler it is that you're using to measure those. That number sounds really low to me. That sounds really low to me.
Right. That was in 2018. No,
I know. And the reason why I'm saying it sounds very low to me is because I started HerFlow in 2016, and I was just doing research around period poverty.
Yes,
and my numbers around period poverty is higher than that.
It is high.
Period poverty only affects women and girls.
Right.
So that number sounds
and I think
really
we're talking about extreme poverty.
And that's why I'm asking, what's the rule that we're using to measure
extreme poverty?
Extreme poverty means what? Means that the person is unable to eat one meal a day or something like that. What?
Yeah, extreme poverty is people who are persons who are experiencing hunger, so to speak. Persons who are below what we understand is the poverty line. So it's the poverty line, but there's an abject poverty line. So there are people that are saying in 2018, but now poverty is at 21% in Jamaica. It's 21% now in about 2021. So it's more than that. That's affected by poverty. But in terms of, they say that people that were living in abject poverty. And that figure might not be right, but that's the figure that But I know that poverty is a major and a sore issue. But in terms of abject poverty, we're talking about further social decays and people who are dropped even further below the poverty line.
All right. Well, I'm not going to speak too much about that because I don't have the particular statistics with me just now, and I like to speak on things that I know about. But what
right,
I will
I will probably get, as we continue, I'll probably probably check the figures that I gave you, because the figures may not be correct figures that I have provided. But in terms of abject poverty, we understand that's what it was. But in terms of your drive, your drive to start HerFlow Foundation and your experience living how did that connect? Because I know one thing you said, the issue of pain and so on and so forth, but you said that you were alluding to something else. What are some of the other stuff that connected with your...
Like I said, I really am very interested in the education around reproductive health. Comprehensive sexual and reproductive health education must be in schools. That's not the case in Jamaica right now, because a lot of the schools in Jamaica are founded by churches, and the more religious the school is, the less they think sexual and reproductive health education is important, because they believe that if we talk about sex to children, they'll just want to have more sex, and that whole premise don't make any sense, but it's what it is. But what we end up with is that we have girls who grow up to be women who do not understand their bodies, and who end up suffering in silence when they have certain illnesses, because they do not have the language or the understanding to speak to their medical professional to get the help that they need. And that's why I talk about pain, because if we accept pain as normal, then we will ignore the purpose that it serves, which is to warn us that there is something in our bodies that we must take a look at, that we must examine, that we must figure out. And so that's the reason why you're seeing so much conversation around reproductive health issues like fibroids and endometriosis and polycystic ovarian syndromes. And all of that is not that it is more popular now. It's just that we have a generation of women who lived with the pain. They could have had endometriosis and they just didn't know, because them just figure, say, well, because I'm a woman, feeling pain is normal, being a woman. And they suffer through years and years of endometriosis, not knowing that it's something that can actually be treated and that their quality of life can be improved. So that is why the education is so important to me. So when I started HerFlow, I visited 3 high schools in the first year. And the first school I went to was Holy Trinity High. And I met a young lady who said to me, I did a period workshop, and, I was talking to the students individually. And she said to me, I can use 1 pad for 5 days. And after I lift my jaw off the floor, I asked her how she did that.
Yes.
1 pad for 5 days.
Okay.
She said, well, usually she don't have any money to buy pads. So what she would do is she'll go to the guidance counselor and ask her for products, and guidance counselor will give her 1 single pad, and she knows she has to make it last as long as she possibly can. So what she would do is she'll put tissue on top of the pad, and she'll change the tissue.
Oh, wow.
So she try to avoid soil in the pad as much as she can. And even if it is soil, she'll just put the tissue on top of it and just keep on changing the tissue. Okay. That is how I started paying attention when I go to the schools and ask them, what's happening with what do we do when the girls don't have any menstrual products? And when I was examining even closer, I realized that through the PASS program, we have approximately 80-something thousand pubescent girls on the PASS program that only gives them food. The PASS program does not supply them with menstrual products. So I thought to myself, if they don't have the money to buy lunch, then they don't have the money if they have their periods to buy menstrual products. When I started to discuss this with the guidance counselors and the school nurses, they confirmed my suspicion and said that what they do is sometimes they will have their own personal stash and they will give them out of their own personal stash, but it's never enough. So that is how the period poverty project side of HerFlow started. But HerFlow is not just about period poverty.
Okay.
HerFlow's mandate is to empower Jamaicans about reproductive health through education and mentorship. Ending period poverty is a project. And I would like to end period poverty so I can get to the education of it all, because that is still our most important issue that I think we must have.
Thank you so much. And that was very important. And by the way, it's the Borgian Borgian project actually did a research, and I think they were saying that people in 2018 in extreme poverty, but as I said, but I agree with you that the figures seem off. Our studies suggest something higher, but as of 2021, we know that poverty has quadrupled in many of our countries, especially I think it's at 22% and climbing, and GDP has fallen, I think, down to 9% or even lower than the prediction was that, but it's probably even going to be lower. But those are some of the issues. But you are here. Not only are you looking at your ending period poverty by provide and how and tell me a little bit of work in terms of period poverty, and then I want to talk to you about also the education piece, because education is very important because it talks about building human capital.
Well, the education.
I was talking for a very long time. Very long time. And nobody could have said that to me. I cannot believe it. I was saying that this is very important. I was saying that this is available on Spotify. I don't know if it is on YouTube. I doubt it. If it is not on YouTube, I think I need to put it up on YouTube. But it's available. You can go to theneoliberal.com and it's available on Spotify, in video or audio. And we are going to get this on video soon. We're going to get this on YouTube, on our YouTube channel soon. I just realized it's not available on YouTube, but it's available everywhere. But you see, it's quite, what a powerful message. Here is a woman that's saying that she's working to end period poverty, and part of the problem of ending period poverty comes from a theology and a thinking. And she said that part of ending period poverty, part of her role at HerFlow is not just to end period poverty, but also to provide awareness and education around sexuality and masculinity and so on and so on and so forth, because that is part of the problem in the society. And I hope that you guys get involved. This is really powerful. This is, I say to you, Caribbean thought can't be devoid or divorced from a particular thinking that affect best practice, that affect other issues in society. Okay, we have to, part of Caribbean thought. Oh, I was making the point that I was talking to a fraternity brother of mine, Phi Beta Sigma, fraternity brother of mine, about, I keep forgetting that point. I keep forgetting this point about thinking and how we do injustice. But anyways, we have to, this is powerful. Yes, we have to get involved. Knowledge can't be devoid of what's going on in society. Okay? It cannot. We have to, and so this is very important. When we think about Caribbean thought, we have to also think about practice and what's going on in society. And then how we can make a difference, what we can do to make a difference, and so on and so forth. But this is going to be available on, you can go to theneoliberal.com, and I wrote in the Neoliberal Journals, and you will see, and also it's a part of Caribbean thought. It's available in the Neoliberal Journals at the Neoliberal Corporation. That's where we end class today, guys. For now, and next week we will. How many more weeks we have left for class? We have about 2 more weeks, I believe. Yes. Yes. All right, but okay, we will end class now. Today I'm not hearing the students today at all. But we will end today, guys. Thank you so much. And any questions? Any questions from you guys? Any questions from you guys for class?
Not from me, sir, no.
Okay, any question from anybody else in the group? No, I could, if you guys want me to play some more, I can play, but I know some of you have time and I have an appointment. But what I will do is please watch this video. And I was saying that if you want to do this as a question, as a paper, or if you guys want to work on this as a major essay or whatever, please, you are free to do so. And just, you may not find a lot of information and research surrounding this particular issue, but in Jamaica, the Herflow Foundation has a whole body of work, and we've written an article. You can email her. So so this is important, okay? And I know, and just so you know, as people in the 21st century, we are putting together new body of work. Okay, we don't have to go to Plato all the time. We can also go to Shelley and Weeks of the Herflow Foundation. Thank you so much, guys. Watch the rest of the film. Next week, what I will do is I will speak to the value of the. What I will do is I will stop share. What I will do next week, I was supposed to watch Who Shot the Sheriff. I don't know if we have time for that, but hopefully we can do that. Who Shot the Sheriff, and we also have a presentation from Reverend Richard Beckford. Hopefully he can come on and talk about Caribbean theology, put that into more perspective for you. Next week, I will send, during the week, I have a paper on the last two Caribbean thought classes. Reverend Hewitt Holmes helped to facilitate the course, the topic looking at sexuality, but he cannot come to the class. He's unavailable. He's very busy, so he won't be able to teach. Wasn't able to come today to talk about the issue of sexuality and the issue of power and penetration and so on and so forth. But I hope that I was able to give you some light on as it relates to the issue of power and looking at it in terms of sexual identity. We're not finished because we're going to, as I said, we're going to come back and talk about and put some of these things into perspective, looking at Rex Nettleford, his article on identity. We also have to look at some of the stuff that we have left for this class. One, we have to look at sexual identity. I'll send you the article by Reverend Hewitt Holmes. He did a lecture and he summarized it. I'll share you the Chantel remind me to send the students that. Remind me to send you the updated lecture presentation on from the lecture presentation I have. It's about 54, 80 pages. I've updated it, you guys, for your reading material. Colorism, and there is a lecture on colorism that I have to present. And there is also, then I have to wrap up on looking at expression, looking at digital technology, podcasting, and so on, which is the last class. And then, of course, redefining and wrapping up, looking at tracing Caribbean. So I like to end by that, ending by tracing Caribbean, and then redefining some concepts such as nationalism, socialism, democratic socialism. I want to go back to ensure that you understand those concepts. Okay, and that is where we will end class today. All right, thank you guys, and I will reach out to some of you. Hopefully I can. Any questions you have, reach out to me. If I'm not responsive, reach out to Chantel, who usually gets me. Okay, thank you guys, and walk good. And those of us who are going to be listening to this lecture today, we miss you at class today. Many people were absent. We miss you. You have a makeup paper to do for me if you miss this class, summarizing what we discussed in the class. That's one. And two, I hope you guys are working on your groups, working on your essays. Some of you are submitting work. That's great. And just so you know, that as we get ready to wrap up this course, I just want to say I'm really appreciating your interaction. Oh, by the way, Haiti, what's going on in Haiti? I was supposed to talk to you guys, but I have some news as it relates to Haiti If you go to the Miami Herald is reporting that U.S. ships, reporting that there is a U.S. ships, there's a major U.S. ship to support peacekeeping mission in Haiti after push for intervention falters. Probably you guys are a part of that, okay? The Biden administration is shifting its strategy on Haiti away from a proposal for a multilateral armed force that would have had the power to combat gangs in the streets of Port-au-Prince to a push at the United Nations for a more traditional peacekeeping mission. 3 sources familiar with the matter told McClatchy and the Miami Herald. The United States had hoped to avoid sending another peacekeeping mission to Haiti, which has hosted 8 in the last 30 years, but its initial plan to rally an international coalition of forces led by an unidentified third country, Brazil, to intervene at the request of the Haitian government has faltered since it was first proposed in the fall, compelling the administration to change course as the security environment in the Caribbean nation rapidly deteriorates. The White House had hoped that Canada would lead such a force, but the push ahead of President Joe Biden's visit to Canada this week made clear that the Canadians were unlikely to take on a leadership role, with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, whatever it's French, publicly casting doubt on Canada's capacity to assume the mission. So that's where we are now. The United States first proposed sending a multilateral rapid action force to Haiti, and we have responded. We have responded to this with the mission. And I wanted and what we did was we included the petition that we are doing. We have publicized it. Okay, we've also sent a letter to the Gleaner. I've written an article about this, and many people are bringing light to what we're doing. I included President Biden and and Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness. I included them in our publications and our tweets and so on. So if they so they may have seen it or so on. But we are working hard, and there's a lot of discussions. But this is good. However, they have refused. They are now going to be sending a peacekeeping mission. But the question still remains: what does this peacekeeping mission include? Okay, what does it involve? Does it involve the CARICOM? We still have questions. Okay, we still have questions. All right, that's it, guys. But that's the latest from Haiti. We're not going to stop with the petition. Okay, continue to do your work in terms of getting people to sign the petition and also creating awareness as it relates to what's going on in Haiti. But as we know now, the Miami Herald is reporting that I'm going to reach out to my friends at the IGDH to find out what they know about what's going on in terms of this new mission, this new change in U.S. policy. Okay, but part of it comes from the awareness and what we are doing also in this classroom and the work that you're doing. So you're doing something, and I want to say thank you so much. Okay, this video went viral. A lot of people are watching it, are looking at the lectures. People are aware of it. You in your small corner and